Hello and welcome to the Low Code Podcast. I'm Faraz Khan from iTrack, and we are the global specialists in Outsystems recruitment. With this podcast, our aim is to increase awareness and appreciation of Outsystems and its impact and benefits to the market, and our early adoption is giving competitive edge to businesses worldwide. During our podcast, myself and my colleague Sushil Chauhan will be speaking to IT leaders and Outsystems MVPs on how Outsystems has transformed their businesses and careers. We also hope that by speaking to MVPs on their career journeys, we can inspire developers from all over the world to learn from others who have already been on the path. So let's go. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Low Code Podcast. Today my guest is Justin James, Outsystems MVP and Chief Architect at Cloud Development Resources. Hello, Justin.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, yourself?
Doing awesome.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I always love talking about Outsystems, and we've worked together for a while, and
Yes,
love to be here.
yes, great. It'd be good to just kind of start with a bit about yourself. You're based in the USA. A bit about your background.
Sure. So my name is Justin James. I've been writing software since I was about 5 years old. It was the first time I sat down a computer. I'm a second generation developer. My father has started 3 successful software development companies.
Wow.
Over his lifetime. He actually just sold his last one about a year ago.
Wow.
So this is something that I've been doing for a while. First time I sat down and programmed, I was about 5. It was on a Wang. It was just sitting down, doing some type-ins for some basic code, back in the day. And so that was the first time I really used a computer, first time I really did any software development. And then I did a little bit of things like Logo, if you remember Logo with the turtles and things like that.
Yeah.
The predecessor to the Lego Brainstorm stuff now, or Mindstorms. This shows you I feel like old now. It's called Legos now.
Yeah.
The programmable Legos. We used the kind of the predecessor to that using Logo, where we'd make the motors go and things like that. And then in middle school, I took some CAD programming, CAD stuff. If you've ever done at least CAD back in the 80s and 90s, it was programming. You would say, pick the pen up, move it to this coordinate, put the pen down, move the pen to this coordinate, pick pen up. And so it was programming, and the output wasn't an application. The output was a drawing. So I did some of that, and then in high school I took programming. We started with BASIC on an NCR mainframe, which I'm assuming was running some version of Linux, or not Linux. They didn't have Linux then. They had Unix.
Unix
version of Unix. And then I moved. My second real language was COBOL.
Okay.
And then from there I went to a language called EdScheme and Pascal. And then in college, I was doing Perl CGI programming to figure out the web. And then my first real job out of college, it was Java, then .NET, a lot of VB macros stuff. And then next thing I knew, I ended up in Outsystems.
So, I saw you kind of, Outsystems was introduced to you in 2009, which I think majority of the globe would never have heard of Outsystems in 2009, especially in the US. So how did that come your way?
So at the time I was writing for Tech Republic, which is a big technology publication. It's now owned by CBS Interactive, which is part of the CBS network, the TV station. And so I was writing for them. I'd been writing for them for 4 or 5 years at that point. I ended up writing for them total for about 7 years. And Mike Jones, who's now at Do It Lean, he was the marketing manager or someone in marketing at Outsystems. They're this itty bitty little company.
Yeah.
Not the gazillion-dollar unicorn
that they are now, yes.
Yeah, nobody had heard of them. And he came to me and said, Justin, would you like to write an article about us? And I looked and I was like, nope. Because keep in mind my background, right?
Yeah.
If you look at my background, I had looked at stuff like Fox Pro. In fact, in high school, I'd used Visual Fox Pro, or I'd used Fox Pro in high school. I looked at stuff like Fox Pro. I looked at VB. Like I was using VB when it was VB2. People don't know this. There was a DOS version of VB with those little block cursors on the 80 by 24 screen. There was a DOS version of VB. I've used these things, and all of them made the same, Power Builder. They all made the same promises Outsystems made, and they never delivered. So when I saw Outsystems, I was like, okay.
Just another one of them.
Just another one of them. And at the time, I've been talking to another writer who was pretty well known at the time named George O. And he and I are still good friends. And he and I have been talking, he's more of a hardware networking person. And he had been asking me like, why does software development stink? Why is it so lousy? And I told him, so this is it, you're doing all this text. There's no way to look at this text and understand what's going on. There's no context to anything. Things like error handling are being treated as more code instead of metadata on the code because there's no representation of code other than just writing kilobytes and kilobytes of text. Yeah. I had one job, my first full-time job out of college. I was writing parsers for a meta search engine. I would spend a week writing 5 lines of code, like 5 or 6 lines of regular expression code. So it's just a horrible way of getting stuff done. Yeah. And so I sat down with George and I was saying, what would my ideal software development tool look like? And this is how it works. And then after a few weeks after Mike Jones reached out to me, I said, I'm kind of running out of ideas up here. Let me talk to these Outsystems people so I can get an article done for the week.
Yeah, sure.
And I looked at it and I said, this is exactly what George and I have been talking about. This is this way to develop software. And I sat down and I ended up spending about half a day with a gentleman by the name of Miguel Baltazar, and he's still at Outsystems.
Yeah.
He and I sat down and for about half a day, and he showed me some tricks and tips. I was like, oh, this all clicks. It all makes sense in my mind. And after we did that, I was just away and running, and I had this little personal application I wanted to build for myself. And in my mind, it was 3 to 6 months of .NET development.
Sure.
I got it done in a 3-day weekend. It was Labor Day weekend, 2009.
Wow.
And by the end of the weekend, I had registered with the South Carolina Secretary of State, registered an LLC to have a company built around this product that I had put together. And within the next couple of months, I was, tightening it down, improving it, and this and that. And then because I was so active in the community, answering questions and things like that, people started coming to me and asked me to do consulting work for them.
Yeah.
I started doing a little freelance consulting work, and then that became a full-time thing. And that's how it went.
Wow. So you, I saw you were very active on the Outsystems community from a early stage. And
there was there, yeah.
Yeah. And because in the USA, obviously, there's not as many people in the Outsystems world compared to. So what kind of, even though you had this little work, were you still kind of thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to take this and roll with it, or you still did some .NET work, or?
So at the time, I was actually working for my father's company.
Okay, that's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
If you ever met my father.
So you couldn't wait to resign then?
Yes. My father, I hope he's not watching. My father is an absolutely brilliant person. To this day, I'm convinced that he is the smartest, most intelligent, and probably the most knowledgeable person on any given topic I've ever met in my life. Wow. I mean, this is a guy that when I was 6 years old, I was 6 or 7 years old, we were going to a fishing trip. We just stopped at the sports store to pick up some bait or tackle or something. And I said, Dad, how does a Xerox machine work? And I see just enough right there on you, so you know what I'm talking about when I say Xerox.
I know Xerox. I know Xerox. Yeah, I've tried to shave the grey down.
So do I. My hair is racing between going bald and going gray. So I tell you, it's a solar panel for the brain. So I asked him. I said, Dad, how does this Xerox machine work?
Yeah.
He spent an hour telling me exactly how a Xerox machine works. He's like, wow. Well, it applies static electricity to the paper, and then it puts a beam of light through this other thing, and then where the black is, the static electricity will remain, and then where the light hits, the static electricity is going to go, and then it puts this dust on, and that's the toner, and then it's going to put through this fuser, which is going to melt it. And, I'm like, I'm like 7, dude.
Yeah.
Like, my father, like, who even knows? And this
Yeah.
was, and I was born in 1978. So this wasn't like he, pulled up his phone and pulled
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
Wikipedia. This is,
All in his head.
this is probably like 1983.
Wow.
And he knows off the top of his head how a Xerox machine, this is my father.
Yeah. Wow. Full of
He,
knowledge.
very demanding person to work with. He and I once had a 4-hour argument over whether or not a function should return null or throw an exception in a particular area. And this was a function being called by one other piece of code, which I also was writing.
Yeah.
And this is a 4-hour argument. So my father, so I was eager to not work for my father anymore.
Yeah.
And so I was doing the consulting work, and it just started picking up steam. And eventually I had enough people where I said, you know what, it's time for me to step out and just do this full time. Yeah, and I did. And at the time, one of my earliest customers was a little company called Wodify.
Okay.
And a lot of people in the Outsystems community have heard of them because they've been an Outsystems built app since 2012, since late 2000.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's when it started. They build the software that runs. At this point, it's probably most CrossFit gyms. If you go to a CrossFit gym, there's a really good chance you're going to see Wodify.
Yeah.
2 TVs up on the screen, up on the wall, a keyboard, mouse, mount into the wall. Fantastic application. Very proud of what we did there.
Yeah.
And they were a customer of mine, and they were just asking me for so many hours. Eventually, they just said, we need you to
come on board.
Yeah. And so I worked for them for 3 years. When I started there, they had, 10 tenants. It's a multi-tenant SaaS app. They had 10 tenants, 1,000 users. When I left 3 years later, they had 2,500 tenants, 300,000 users across the world.
Wow.
I mean, this app was so important that if it went down, if we had a hiccup, I had SolarWinds on this thing monitoring and telling me like every 5 minutes if things were good.
Yeah.
5 minutes. Within 5 minutes, I find out people would be posting on our Facebook page, "Are you down?" before SolarWinds went off.
Wow.
Like I get this Facebook alert. Somebody's posting like, "Are you down?"
Yeah.
And then 30 seconds later, SolarWinds would say, "You're down." And
You're down.
Like, this is how involved.
Yeah.
And it was funny because like you'd be helping somebody out, you'd be looking through the users, and you would see people you knew. Now I don't mean like people you knew from down the street.
Yeah.
I mean like famous professional wrestlers,
Wow.
singers, actors, and stuff like that. You'd be like, real people use this application.
Yeah, that's great. So
proud of what we did at Wodify. Yeah. I went from there to FICO, where I was their in-house Outsystems expert. Spent a cup of tea over at Cognizant, went back to FICO, and now I'm at CDR, and I've been at CDR for 2 years now.
So you became an MVP in 2000. That was the first batch, wasn't it? 2016.
Yep.
So
we had no idea this was going to happen. They said, you're coming to next step. Why don't you come a day early? We're going to do this thing just for developers. And they did this thing just for developers. It's the predecessor to what they now call ODC or OSDC, depending on which year they keep changing it.
Yeah.
There was a predecessor to that. And there's probably 50, 60 of us there. It's my first time ever having a Portuguese pizza with canned corn and an egg on top. And first time I ever had tuna pizza. Carla, if you're listening, I'm still holding the tuna pizza against you.
And, you don't eat tuna pizza anymore then.
I would have eaten it the first time. I thought it was chicken. I thought it was chicken. I thought it was like this chicken. I think this canned chicken and jalapenos. And I said, that doesn't look very good, but I'm hungry and I'll eat it.
I'll just eat it.
This isn't chicken. It's tuna. It's tuna.
Wow.
It's tuna.
Yeah.
What are you thinking, Portugal? I know Portugal loves canned fish, but tuna and jalapenos on pizza, it's not. I'm from New York City. New York City, so pizza isn't.
It's a big thing. Yeah.
It's a big thing to make. It's important.
I can see how you would have been offended.
And there's one way to make a pizza, and I will say that I'm accepting to a Chicago pizza. I've been in Chicago. I've had Chicago pizza. There is room in my heart. I'm not Chicago pizzaist.
Okay.
I'm not Chicago pizza phobic. I've had Chicago pizza, and I liked it. In fact, I enjoyed it. But Tuna.
Tuna's a no-go.
Bridge too far. None of that. No, thank you, friend. But yeah, and then they said we're doing this thing. Then they announced the MVP program. They were calling us up, and I was like, this is so cool. This is the coolest thing. I think you're right. I think that was 2016. In fact, it was right after I got my Outsystems.
Oh, cool! Wow,
and
that's cool.
And I'd scheduled this appointment to get this Outsystems tattoo, and I'd sent them the logo in advance. And I landed in Lisbon on a Saturday. And I remember leaving Philadelphia or wherever I was, and my wife's yelling at me because the water heater in our house is broken, and the person who was supposed to fix it before I left, it wasn't fixed.
Oh no!
And she's like, "Well, I'm just getting." They say they can't have it fixed by Monday, and the kids can't go without hot water for 3 days. And like, did you go to your mother's house to take a bath or something? Like, and she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna buy a tankless water heater right now." I was like, next thing I know, it's like I'm sitting there, like I'm landing in Portugal, finding out that she just threw like $2,000 on the credit card to replace the water heater. I'm like, but this thing was under warranty. Like, just waited till Monday, and this would have been free. So I land in, I'm having the worst day.
Yeah.
I land there, I take a nap, I go to this tattoo place, I get the tattoo done, I put it on Twitter.
So you got the tattoo done in Portugal?
In Portugal.
Oh, amazing.
Queen of Hearts tattoo shop in Portugal, in Lisbon. And I get there and I post up on Twitter, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's so awesome." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's awesome." And then somebody says, "We're unveiling the new logo on Monday, right? Or Tuesday, or whatever." The
red logo.
I said, "That's a joke, right? That's fine." They're like, "No, it's no joke. Like, we wanted to keep it a secret, but now that you got the old logo on your skin permanently," I was like, "For real?"
Oh God!
Like, yeah, for real, guy. I'm like, okay. And so we went to this what they call Developer Day.
Yeah.
Real good event. They had this great ask us anything section where I got to ask them a bunch of questions, mostly about Java.
Yeah. Okay.
The Java platform.
Yeah.
Not in existence anymore. And then we did that, and that was awesome. I was inflicted with tuna pizza, not so awesome. Got to meet some really awesome people. That's when I first met Vera. That's when I first met Carla. Met a ton of people who I hadn't met before. I met Killian there. That was the first time I met Killian. And then we did the next step, and it was great, and life was awesome. But yeah, that's how.
So for the MVP program, what was the kind of criteria? Was it the same as what it is now back then?
I don't think they had criteria.
Oh, really? Okay, fine. They just
They may have had, if they had criteria, they may have had criteria. I don't know.
Yeah.
But when you looked at the people who were announced, it was very clear. You knew who everybody was.
Yeah,
it was a small number of people. I don't know the number. It might have been 10. It may have been 15. It may have been 20. I don't know the number. But it was a very small number of people. It was there was nobody in there where you said, "Gee, I don't know why they're there." Like, remember before when I said like I used to contribute a lot to the community?
Yeah,
I don't.
Yeah.
Killing is the reason why I don't.
Yeah.
Because that guy, I'm not a morning person.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm a
after lunch.
I don't wake up after 9 a.m. But I'll say that there's a lot of days where my first alarm is set to 8:45.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
So everybody knows this. Clark, our CEO, he knows this. He makes jokes about it all the time.
Yeah.
I get him back. And so how was I mentioning morning person? Oh, yeah. So I would wake up, like 8:30 or whatever, and I'd wake up and Killian would have answered half the thing. I'd go through the email that Outsystems sends out, and I'd click on the questions, and Killian's asked out, and I'm like, okay, like you're taking you answered most of the questions. There's nothing for you. And Killian's like why I stopped doing a lot of my forum posts, because he was giving such high quality answers on time, early, and I was like, all right, Killian, you got this. And then I focus more on ideas. Something like 3.5, I forget the exact numbers, but something like 3.5% of the ideas are ones that I've put up, or like 3.5% of the implemented ideas, or 5% of the implemented ideas are ones that I put. It's something like that. It's some ridiculous number. I have to pull the numbers. So I started working a lot on ideas. Once they gave MVPs moderation powers, I I stick to the ideas. I merge a lot.
Yeah.
Daniel from Productly, he's taken over a lot of that because again, Europe hours, and that dude wakes up and he'll be doing stuff, and I'll be in bed. Like I'm still awake, but I'm in bed, kind of finishing up my day on my phone.
Sure.
I'm like, Daniel's doing stuff, and I'm still awake, and he's in Europe. One of us is we're both sick.
Something's
people.
wrong.
We're both sick people. He's waking up at like 4:30 in the morning Europe, and I'm awake at 2 a.m. US. We're both sick people.
Yeah, I think so.
We're both sick.
Yeah.
So he's merging ideas. I'm merging ideas. I do a lot of that. I didn't realize that I'm like one of the top 3, I think, Forge people.
Wow.
I had no idea I was one of the top 3 or 4 Forge people, something like that. Yeah. I had no idea because I'll just do something like, oh, I want to do that in another environment.
Yeah.
So I'll put up in the Forge and put a description on it, and then I'll go use it in my other environment. And I'm not like trying to do that. It's just like I need an application so I could switch tenants. So I could take not tenants. So I could take a tenant that was in one user provider and move it to another user provider. Because sometimes you build code and you choose a different user provider and you're like, oh, I made a mistake. And so I built this whole thing, I put it up there, and maybe I only got 50 downloads, but it's useful.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got like 35, 36 Forge components. I didn't even realize it.
Wow, that's really impressive. That's great. So, you mentioned obviously you're at Cloud. Do you want to tell us a bit about cloud development resources and things that are going on over there?
Yep. So Cloud Development Resources, we are a professional services firm. They got their start originally as a company called DB Results based out of Sydney, Australia, who's been in business.
My hometown.
Been in business for a while. And by the way, Sydney is one of the 3 cities left on my bucket list.
So you haven't been yet?
I haven't been to Sydney yet. Sydney, Tokyo, and Athens. Wow. So if you can wrangle me a trip to Sydney, perhaps it could be a team building.
Maybe we can meet there. Yeah, I think that would be a good.
I think a business meeting, perhaps to coordinate.
Yeah.
The next podcast.
I'll speak to Clark about that next time I speak to him.
You know what? Don't speak to Clark. Speak to Richard, please.
Okay, fine.
Clark likes to say no when it comes to spending money. Richard likes to say yes.
Yes. Okay. Money. Cool.
But Clark asks hard questions like, what's the ROI on that? What value do we expect to get from this trip? What's the anticipated revenue generated by this trip? Clark asks questions like that. Richard says, Sydney, that sounds like fun.
Yeah,
Can I
let's
go
do
too?
It. Yeah. I'll book 2 tickets. Yeah.
So Richard, so DB Results has been in business for a while, multiple decades now, and about 4 or 5 years ago, they opened up an Outsystems only development center in Manila, Philippines.
Yes, I've seen that. Yeah,
and they've got about 150, 200 people there. I don't keep close track of the number.
Did they just find developers from other stacks and train them up, or were they already
by and large
presence? Yeah. Wow, that's
by
really
and
good.
large, strong outreach to universities, strong development of other developers. That's what they were doing. And they had a development center in Manila, Philippines. And then about 2.5 years ago, they started to open up shop in the US in Richard Weatherstone. And so they formed CDR, Cloud Development Resources, to service the US market. And Richard Weatherstone was a part of that. He and I met. We had a cup of coffee. Literally, this is what happened. We were introduced by an Outsystems sales rep.
Wow.
Because the Outsystems sales rep, Scott Chadwick, unfortunately no longer with Outsystems. But Scott, every time I tell a story, I always tell Scott, thank you, Scott. Scott Chadwick was in the area. Yeah. So what he wanted is he was working a deal in my area with CDR, with Richard. That's why he was in Columbia, South Carolina area. But he wanted to meet me just so he could say hello. And the big thing is he wanted to buy me an inexpensive breakfast. I think he kept it to $8, so no violation of $20. He bought me an inexpensive, greasy breakfast. And what he really wanted from me was to act as a reference for another deal that he was working in the area. So I said, sure, Scott, I'll be a reference for you on that account. And then he was doing that. And he said, by the way, I'm doing this deal in Colombia. I was like, oh, I'd be interested in hearing more about that. I met Richard, and he and I sat down. We met at Starbucks. We had a cup of coffee. And after about 20, 25 minutes of talking, he said, Justin, what are your numbers? And I told him my numbers. He kind of closed his eyes for a moment, maybe about 5 seconds, says, here's what I can do. And he laid out some numbers, and I closed my eyes for a few seconds and said, yeah, Richard, I can work with that. I can do that. We shook hands. That's how I got my job at CR. It was like, it was a third lesson, because I remember meeting him at 8:30. It was like at 9 a.m. He and I were shaking hands.
Wow.
And then, so he had told me, and this is the funny part of the story, he had told me that he was in Aiken. That's where he was staying. I was like, why are you in Aiken? I didn't want to say anything. I'm like, Aiken's really far away. It's like 45 minutes or an hour outside Columbia. I was like, does he have to stay that far out because his company's so small they can't afford a hotel in downtown Columbia?
A small B&B.
Yeah, or he's got to pay like $20 a night for a hotel because he can't afford 100. That's what I'm thinking. Like, I'm like, oh goodness, what am I signing on to? These folks have no money. How are they going to pay my paycheck? They've got no money. And so something happened. I forget exactly how it happened, but at the time I was driving a Hellcat Challenger. And if you don't know what one of those is, it's basically the most American car imaginable.
Okay.
It's giant. It weighs a ton. It weighs like 4,400 pounds.
Wow.
But it's got 707 horsepower.
Wow.
It's got this massive engine, massive supercharged engine. It's
very loud.
It's extremely loud. Like when I had this one house, I'd start the car, be in the garage, and the dishes in my kitchen would rattle. Once I came around a corner and I just got on the gas, I wasn't even speeding, and a police officer pulled me over. I said, well, how fast was I going? He says, I don't know, but I know you're going too fast. He said, how do you know I was going too fast? He says, well,
it's too loud.
He says it was too loud. I said, look, this is the exhaust that came with the car. All I did is I put my foot all the way down to the ground, but this is the noise the car makes at 30 miles an hour. And if too loud means too fast, I don't know what to tell you, sir.
Yeah, exactly.
So somehow he said, oh, that's your car. That's your Hellcat in the parking lot. I saw it when you came in. When I came in, I said, yeah, what are you driving? He says, oh, I'm driving that Ford F-350. I said, F-350, you rent an F-350 Super Duty? He says, oh, no, I didn't rent that. That's what I'm using to pull the RV. I said, oh, you're in an RV, and that's what you're at a campground outside Aiken? He says, yes. I said, well, that explains why you're in Aiken. It's not because you're broke, it's because that's the campground site.
I got you.
I was like, no, we got money. My wife and I are in the RV. We're going camping. I said, oh, this explains everything. You've got enough money to pay my salary.
You'll be fine. Yeah, you'll be fine.
So Richard says, I've always wanted to ride in a Hellcat. And I don't know, for those who don't know Richard, he's this soft-spoken British gentleman.
Yeah.
Soft-spoken. He's very, very distinguished looking, mild manner. You talk to him, you find out that this guy stopped racing motorcycles a couple years ago.
Wow.
And so we get in the car. Now I'm not going to go into too many details, but let's say that I operate the vehicle near the edges of its performance envelope.
Wow.
Richard had a great time. He says, I think this is even faster than my Porsche. And we had a fantastic time. And that was it. It was just like a match made in heaven. I was like, wow. This is it. And so Clark Swain, who's the CEO of CDR, he had accepted his position while we were talking.
Okay.
Richard had gotten the email from Clark saying, I accept.
I'm in, yeah.
So within 10 minutes, Clark, we had employees number 1 and 2. Clark is the CEO, myself as the chief architect, and that was the American side of the company. And this was about 2 years ago. And like I was saying before, a year ago, we had our first ever company-wide meeting in Nashville, Tennessee. And I took a selfie. It was me, Grayson Utstrand, William Richards, BJ Richards, for those who know him, and Paul Jassel. That was the entire architecture team. And even at 4 people, we were still a bigger architect team than anybody else has in the United States. Nobody has 4 architects in the US. And today, Clark and I had this conversation yesterday. I've got 16 people reporting to me in my architecture group. I've got it like we're in the middle of breaking up. We all know that I've got too many people reporting to me. We're in the middle of breaking up and putting some people in between me and there and this and that. Sure. More than 4 to 5. And it's because we've grown so quickly.
Really fast,
we've got architects and tech leads in Portugal and Brazil now. A year ago, 6 months ago, we were saying, I don't think we're going to have, we're sticking to US. And now We've got people in Portugal and
Everywhere,
Brazil, and I'm looking. I'm looking at doing deals outside the Western Hemisphere now, and the growth has been amazing. And the reason is because, first of all, we got a great team. Anybody who knows people, anybody who knows like Grayson or Paul Jass, I already name dropped them. Anybody who knows who Grayson or Paul is, they know. They know. And I can't get these guys off project. I can't even get these guys vacations because customers are like, we can't go without them. I'm like, well, they've got a contract that says they do get vacation days.
We have to give it to them.
I even want them to have a vacation. I even want them to have a vacation. And here's like the ultimate compliment. Here's the ultimate compliment, I think, to CDR. Well, two, we've never lost a client. We've had clients where they finished out the natural life cycle of the project. It happens, right? This is just business. The way I describe professional services, I'm like a marriage counselor. I don't want to be here forever. I want to help you get through your problem.
Work it out,
and show you how to solve your problems. Going to teach you how to solve your problems.
Sure.
If I'm here like 5 years later, there's something wrong.
Something's wrong.
Unless you really want me here, and then I'll be here. But
I
feel like I've failed if I'm here 5 years later. There's that. But the other thing is we've never had an employee in the U.S. quit.
Wow, that's very good. That's really good.
Never 2 years, and especially with me having all these tech people underneath me. Of course, now I say this, and I probably got an email. I'm here, Justin's with deep. I received a job offer from a competitor.
Yeah, and they're gonna let me take my holidays.
I've decided to become a professional dog groomer. Sorry, Justin. With my life, that's how it's going to go. Actually, I've been watching Teams Open, and I saw one message from one of our architects that said, "What a nightmare!" And I saw the word delete. I'm like, as soon as I get off this call, I know
you got something to deal with. Yeah, something to deal with.
But you know what? Nobody's actually called my phone. This means that they got this. And this is like, that's another true sign. Like, I see stuff like 6 months ago or a year ago. If I saw the words deleted and what a nightmare,
you know it's going to come your way.
You'd be seeing me, right? You'd be sitting on the side, I'll be going like this, reading, you'd be seeing me typing. Now I'm like, these folks, they got it.
Yeah.
It's tough for me to have this trust.
To let go.
So to quote Prince, maybe I'm just like my father. A little callback to earlier. I am very much like my father. I am very much, this is the way it's got to be. And one of the big challenges I had at Wodify, and one of the big challenges I've had, and it's a lot less of a challenge here at CDR, has been just letting go and trusting what I've hired. And the cool thing is that our team at CDR, and it's not just my technical, the entire company, I have so much trust. I trust the people in the Philippines. I trust the people that we've hired in Portugal and Brazil. I trust the people we have in the US. I even trust our salespeople. I even trust our salespeople. That never happens. Technical people never trust salespeople. Now, to be fair, I'm part of our sales team.
Okay, yeah. So you kind of have to.
I'm part of our sales team. Like they have one-on-ones every Monday, and I get on those one-on-ones. Like every single deal we do, I'm involved in.
Wow.
Every single deal I have involvement in, I have knowledge of. I'm making sure that we're not selling anything we can't do.
You can't deliver,
whether it be timeline, whether it be people, whether it be skill set, whether it be the approach the customer wants to follow. I will tell somebody, hey, look, I hear you. I understand why you want to do that way. Let me suggest that it may not be ideal. And here's why. You can still make your own decision. I'm going to, at the end of the day, the customer is the customer.
Yes, of course.
I want to educate you. And sometimes sometimes they follow my suggestions, sometimes they don't. We've never had a project, like I said, was unsuccessful. We've had, like any professional services company, we've had our challenges.
Yeah, of course.
We've had times where the customer said, this bill was a bit higher than we expected, or, I felt that, they might say, gee, where we're at, I thought we'd be farther ahead. It happens. It's professional services. If people are always going to be happy, if you want to make people always happy, than like going to the birthday clown business.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And even then, there's going to be the kid who's afraid of clowns at the party.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, he ends up crying.
If you want to make everybody happy 100% of the time, become the birthday clown. Like, I'm not saying, but professional story. I love our track record. I love knowing that I can call any single customer that we've done business with. My first little client at CDR, the first client I ever signed here, $5,000.
Wow.
She wanted a couple hours worth of work, small little business, and then we did it. And we actually probably gave her about 10,000 hours worth of work.
Yeah.
We did it. She was happy with what we did. She was so happy that she came back and she said, I'd like to do some more work. And said, I think that you're a little bit too small for us. And she said, okay, can you recommend somebody? And I took somebody who I'd done some consulting work with. Hey, Claudio, and pointed her way.
Wow, amazing.
I pointed her his way, and it worked out for them. I said, this is the way I like to do things.
Yeah, that's great.
I've never had an unhappy customer. I've never had an unhappy employee. The worst thing I had to say in a performance review, when I did performance reviews in December, is I said to one person, I said, this one project you were on, things were slipping, and you didn't let me know about it, and the project manager didn't let me know about it, so we didn't know. That was like the word. I said, please, in the future, if something's slipping, even if you think the project manager is keeping me in the loop, keep me in the loop anyways. It's not being a snitch. It's not being a rat. It's just making sure things are communicated.
Yeah.
And that was it. If that's the worst thing I have to say in a performance review.
Not so bad.
With all these, not so bad. Like I'm like my heart's singing.
Yeah.
Hallelujah! Oh, to joy! My heart's happy. I love it, man.
That's great.
I love the team we've got here.
That's really good. That's really good. I know you're short on time, so I'll keep the question short. One thing I kind of want to ask you was, for someone who's been using Outsystems for so long, what do you think kind of have been the key things that have got them to where they are today? The key kind of things they've implemented that have really made them the company they are now.
So I think the key things that put Outsystems on the map, what really did it for them, was they took a view of the software development life cycle. And they said, let's ignore everything about this. Let's not ignore it like it doesn't matter, but let's ignore everything about the way people currently do it and strip the job down to its bare minimum. What are we attempting to do? And they said, web-based applications, what are we trying to do? We want a user with a web browser to be able to connect to an application, to be able to connect to a server and have a desktop app-like experience as closely as possible, working with code that's connecting to data in a database. What is the most effective and efficient way for somebody to create that application? So they looked at things like, they said, well, we need version control, but they said, does the version, and keep in mind, this thing came out in the early 2000s, so they're talking about clear case, visual source safe, subversion, right? Those were the, so they said version control. None of this makes sense. Like you have to learn an entirely new language just to use version control. Why? Right? They said, why are we having people write code by hand? Why is, and they just started asking why, what's the best way to do it? And to me, when Outsystems is operating in that fashion, rather than chasing a fad, when they, for example, in version 9, they introduced REST services, that wasn't chasing a fad, that was enabling developers to work. When Outsystems focuses on saying, what is the job that a developer's trying to do at its bare fundamentals? A developer's not trying to write an object hierarchy, in an object-oriented language. The object hierarchy is a tool to allow them to model application data. When Outsystems, so how do we model application data really well? When Outsystems has their thinking cap on and they have it set to that setting, that is when they produce absolutely brilliant software that any developer with an open mind and experience in the world of development says, oh, this is 10 times easier than what I'm doing now. When they're operating, that's why I call it the Outsystems philosophy. helping
Mhm.
developers do their job as efficiently and painlessly as possible. And Outsystems is working like that. They do amazing things. And I'm not saying that they stop doing it. I'm just saying that's the mindset. Like sometimes you got to chase the buzzword, to help the sales. Sometimes that's the way when they focus on that stuff, that's when they innovate. That's when they do just truly amazing stuff.
Amazing. And speaking about developers, what would kind of be your message to developers today who are skeptical of Outsystems like you were, over a decade ago?
I think that I always say give it a shot. The people that I find love Outsystems fall into two buckets. Junior developers, especially those who just finished a code camp, a boot camp, a computer science degree, people who haven't been submerged and drowned in industry best practices, right?
Yes.
They say, I know how to write code. I know it's hard. I know it's easy. And this thing makes everything easier. Those folks love Outsystems. The other people who love Outsystems are really senior people who are architects, people who are very senior developers, where they look at it, they are so tired. People like me, when I came to it, people who are so burnt out from doing things hard and saying, I've tried 10 different languages over the course of my career and none of them were a significant improvement. Yeah. And then they see Outsystems and they say, I really am working 2 to 10 times faster. This is, when I switched from .NET to Python, I got 10% faster. I didn't switch from .NET to Python, but I'm just saying, I got 10% faster, but then this was harder and this was easier. They don't see a significant improvement in their actual velocity. Senior people who are really kind of cynical and bitter, and they try Outsystems and say, oh, wait, this really does solve my problems I've had for 20 years. Those folks love it. The people who struggle with it are the mid and senior level developers who have prejudged that Python or Ruby or .NET or whatever, that's the best tool possible.
That's the way to go.
Git is the only way you do version control. If you don't use Git, you're wrong. If you don't use React for your front end, you're wrong. Like those folks, they hate it because they just say, and what they would try to do at best is they replace Visual Studio or Eclipse. They replace it with Service Studio, and they try doing the exact same things they've always done, and they get worse results because Outsystems is not designed to do that. Outsystems is not designed for a ton of stuff that they're attempting to do. Then they get angry. They're like, this is garbage. It doesn't support feature language ABC. And because if you actually take the time to look at its development lifecycle, you don't need that. But they don't want to hear it. Those are the people who reject it. And I say, please, open mind, try it. Try working it the way it's meant to be worked.
Amazing. Great. Well, thanks for your time. I know you've probably got a few fires to put out, or hopefully not. Thanks for taking out the time to speak to me.
It's been a pleasure. Anytime.
And hopefully we'll meet in Sydney when things are better.
I mean, I believe that when we were talking, I got a message from Richard saying, Justin, I think it's imperative that we have a meeting in Sydney.
Okay, great.
People and everybody else. We'll just have a meeting with all our favorite vendors. And
that's a good idea.
I think that when I have this conversation with Richard, I'll say, and I nominate Athens or perhaps Tokyo as the backup cities in case Sydney's unavailable.
Yeah, if the border's still closed, we can meet elsewhere.
Athens or Tokyo would be suitable.
Sounds great.
I did a layover once. I did a layover once in Tokyo. I don't count it. I was there for 4 hours and I ate some ramen and got some
at the airport.
At the airport. So I went on a trip. My first trip in a year. I was in Houston, Texas, this week. This was the first time in my life I've set foot outside of an airport in Texas. I've been in Texas on the ground probably 10 or 20 times in my life. I've never once set foot before Saturday or Sunday. I've never once set foot outside the Dallas or Houston airports. I had no idea what I had no idea what Texas was like. I was like, I've in the airport. Every airport looks the same. Chicago. The one and only time I've been in Chicago outside the Chicago airport was at Next Step. 2017, and then twice I got out of the airport, ran the car, and drove to Milwaukee.
Wow.
I've actually never actually been in Chicago. Like I've been in a hotel in Chicago and with a conference. I've never actually been in Chicago. I don't know what the streets of Chicago look like. I don't know what the Chicago weather is like. I know I've literally never the Chicago piece. I had it delivered to my room. I've never been to Chicago. You know, I've been in Chicago 20 times at O'Hare or Midway at Air. in Chicago.
So you've still got a lot of traveling left to do then.
I've got tons of traveling. I'm so glad and grateful for the work I do. I've been all over the world, all over the United States. Love it. Got to keep traveling.
Yeah,
it has been a pleasure. This has been awesome.
Anytime. Thank you, Justin. Thank you. I hope to speak to you soon.
Same here. Take care.
You. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Low Code Podcast, hosted by iTrack, Global Outsystems Recruitment Specialist. Be sure to subscribe and see you next time.